Well, hi everybody. It's season 2, episode 24. Yes, I'm guessing. I'm not going to pretend. With me is Gary. Gary is still is contractual. We all know this by now. But the great news is we've got Paul Evans. Yes, Paul Evans, the CEO MD, leader of the pack of Carlisle Group. Am I right?
Carlile Support Services, official type.
Carlisle Support Services. I missed off a word. So it's a longer title the way Paul says it. That's the most, and that's what counts. So before I ask you anything, Paul, yeah, I have to say, you got this title, you worked your way through the ranks, and you get to the very top of the tree, yeah? And there you are, and you think, oh, not enough people are going to hate me. I'll be a referee. Is that what you thought? That there's not enough people that don't like me, so I'll go and be a referee.
Yeah, that's it. I've had enough abuse Monday to Friday, and then Saturday afternoon I wanted some more to top it up. Yeah, that's exactly it. I wondered where you were going with that question to start off with, but yeah, that's. Having said that, I have been refereeing since I was 13 years old. So, yeah.
We're not going to say anything now, not at all, Gary. Especially because I'm a footballer. Anyway, I suppose we best ask, first of all, sorry, I should say, Gary's here saying, Gary, tell us anything about you that I haven't already heard.
Thank you, Ian. My name is Gary Wright. As you're fully aware, I've been in the security industry for 38 years now.
Did you used to wear the old tuxedos?
Yes, I did, Ian.
Yeah, you used to like that, didn't you?
Nice.
Anyway, let's get on to the real star of the show now. Is Paul. Please tell us about yourself.
So, I think like many people, fell into this industry. Never sort of thought when I was at school that I would be working in this industry, but even we've just obviously had the last couple of weeks of civil unrest and riots and the challenges that brings. Leading a business that's got 5,000 frontline staff. It's one of the most interesting industries I think in the UK. It does keep you on your toes. It's exciting. I speak to other people who work in. I'm not saying that all these industries are mundane, but where they do the same every day. I don't think in security, similar to the projects that we all see, every project's different. Every event's got challenges. Every contract's different each time you do it. And I think that's the buzz, really. I don't think many of us actually chose that this would be a career path, but you're trying to make the best of what that path can be for either yourself, but also for all those people that you're responsible for and trusted with.
It's fun.
It is fun. It's rewarding as well. In fairness, I don't just think it's fun. I think it's also. I've just done an induction course this morning where we get the next sort of intake of managers come in, and it's pleasing to see that we've had 58% of all our appointments, internal appointments this year, have been promotions. And I think that's an amazing stat, really, in terms of people that are progressing their career. Now, we're fortunate, I guess, our industry, for the wrong reasons sometimes, is a growing industry. So there is more and more. I think I put a stat out a few months back that there's now 3.14 security officers for every police officer in the UK. And I can only see with what's happening in the world at the moment that will get even more in terms of that ratio will creep up towards 4-1. And therefore, we've got a real opportunity to improve the industry as a whole, really, and to drive standards and to try and, I'm not saying do what it should have probably done 20 years ago, but we've got a real opportunity, really, to try and push on now and to really allow those that want to do good work to make it into a career and probably to stop where many people, equally many leaders that I speak to, there's not many leads of security businesses that said it was a career choice that they were considering when they came out of university or A-levels or GCSEs, as we probably all were. You went and you did something and you fell into it when you got into it and you enjoyed it that much.
Well, Gary wouldn't know what a university is. He's seen them and he's read about them. Yeah, well, he read. I say, his wife told him that these things exist. But in all honesty, Gary's been in, as I say, as he said, for 38 years. And how old were you when you started, G?
I was 18 years old, literally 18 years old. I was invited to, I wasn't invited. What it was the illegal rave scene, and we were doing illegal raves. And my friends were doing the raves, and I started doing the security for the raves, and that's how I started in there. So, yeah, that's how it started for me.
And you've done everything ever since, haven't you?
I've covered most things, but I don't do cyber security. That's the only thing that just doesn't appeal to me. But yeah, I've stood on doors. I've been retail. I've worked as management. I've run operation rooms. I've stood on bars. I've run large events. I'm still organising large events now on bits and pieces. So yeah, you name it, I've worked it.
I went down the other day, because I feel as though I must leave the office. I've taken your advice, so I just haven't posted it on social media yet. The thing is that, get out, see the troops. Unfortunately for me, Gary is the only troop that I have, so I didn't have to go far. But we had a really good day's sort of training, didn't we? On doing that, but down at the place that he's working at, and I couldn't believe it, because when I used to do stuff personally, it was a lot tamer, and I was DJing, to be honest. It's much nicer. It's a much nicer way to live. But Gary, how many people did you have last weekend? And over 3 days, how many sessions?
There was four sessions, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 10,000 people in 3 days. Right. So it becomes a bit of a nightmare. That's why I've got no purple. That's a real reason. But,
I just thought I was going to have to shave my head here. Otherwise, I was going to look, the odd one out again.
But I tell you what, one thing that I do admire you for, Paul, is the fact is, what inspires you? Because you go out and you meet the guys and girls out on the ground, speak to people, you give them certificates, bits and pieces. What inspired you to do that? Because it's a really great thing to do.
There's probably a couple of things, really. The first one was, I guess I started not too far from your neck of the woods. I started as a patrol officer around Leicestershire, working for Reliance on the patrol net division. So I was sold a job that wasn't a job, actually was turned into saying, you will be the area manager, but at the moment we've got nobody to actually do the job. So can you get in the car and can you work some evenings and shifts and get out and do some alarm response? And I think when you've come in that way and you've actually, in terms of work with people who have got challenges, they've got families, they've got crises, they've got all the things that we all know that happens in life, you don't tend to lose some of that. I think also there was obviously something ingrained in me around in terms of my dad, probably saying hard work, and I've used the phrase many times, so I'll try not to use it again, but hard work covers up so many sins. I think equally, though, there's sacrifices, and that comes with life in terms of when you actually look back and you think, 46 now, you look back and think, actually, those days when you stood on a warehouse or a gatehouse or a platform or an event, should you be at home? Should you be looking after? But I think the event scene is probably one of the most hardest working in terms of doing live events or live venues. I think it is one of the longest. I'm not condoning this, by the way, but it's one of the, when you're in event mode and you're doing back to back, and if you think of some of the, we do a lot of sporting events, but if you think of like Royal Ascot, where you got 5 days, that's it. It's long days getting around, seeing people. And I think that therefore brings me back into, I guess, and there's some great other leaders, by the way, in our industry that do it really well as well. I don't think that I'm unique in that, but you want to thank everybody who works them long hours. And the other thing with what's happening, as I said, in the world at the moment, is gets to go home safe. That's the biggest thing for me, is that, and therefore, I remember in COVID, I gave my mobile number out to all 3,600 staff, and my partner at the time said, "What on earth have you done that for? Your phone will ring." And I said, "Well, that's the whole point. I wanted the phone to ring because people were about to go through So when none of us knew what was going to happen in pandemic, they just potentially lost all their income. They didn't know where the next sort of obviously opportunity was going to come. We were trying to spin people out of events into working at supermarkets, doing COVID patrolling or COVID mask coverings or support in terms of the test and trace regimes. And I think that bit is, you've got to remember that you put your trust as a CEO and you turn that back up. I mean, it's the whole thing, is everybody's said this, you put the CEO at the bottom and you're there to support the actual product. And the product is the guys and girls that go out and do the job. It's not the CEO, it's not the management team, it is. And I have to also remember that in between there is a real good middle layer of people, though, that I shouldn't forget. I've obviously sometimes been criticised. And again, reflecting, I've tried to address that sometimes you get criticised because you are so focused on the front line. And you've got to remember that probably before that front line officer or person's actually got an issue, they've probably rung their manager at 11 o'clock at night. And that manager's answered that phone. And therefore, we've got to recognise that all the way through our industry. So I think that's probably the ingrained bit on me, is that you do want to actually make sure that people are looked after, have got a voice and can communicate. It doesn't mean you can solve everything. And the amount of times I've had text messages saying, can I sort out a uniform at 2 a.m. in the morning? And I think, crikey, why is that being texted to the CEO? But it's, in one sense, it is quite nice to a certain degree that employee feels that they can reach out to the CEO. And as we've got bigger now, we've got 5,000 staff. I can't do it all anymore. That's an reflection, I would say. And I've said that to my team over the last few years, is you've got to obviously recognise that to be scaled, and we have scaled, we've gone from what was 1,600 staff to 5,000. You've got to make sure that the team also want to share those human values. And I think, you'll work with people in your day job and in your life and your careers. And it's hard, isn't it? You try to find people who want to make those similar sacrifices without, imagine selling the job. You're inviting people in, and you're going to work most weekends, you're going to be out until 10 o'clock, you're not going to get home, you're not going to do this. And actually, at the end of it, you'll get customers who might not like you because they're all drunk and they're obviously trying to cause you aggro. Try to sell that job to people is quite hard. So the least that they can expect is, but you will get somebody who tries and cares for you. And we did a lot of work around trying to pick our customers wisely, not in terms of saying that every time we get this right. We've got some amazing customers, but you're trying to pick customers who share those values. And some of our customers have done amazing things. I won't name them now, but where they've really stood alongside us and said, yeah, we're going to raise the money up to £15 an hour, up to £16 an hour. And then we've had to exit some customers who still want. I mean, it amazes me. I won't name this. We've exited one customer this year who said, we're going back to pay minimum wage. And I went, for a security officer, you're going back to paying £11.44. And that scares the hell out of me, because as we all know, that means that somebody's willing to do it for £11.44. And that in lies some of the challenges we've got in our sector across the entire events arena in terms of a wide security industry. For everybody who's trying to push in the right way, there are a number of people, sadly, who will take the quick buck and try and make a quick dollar.
Can we just park that for a second? Because I do want to sort of touch on one of the reasons is, how many boards are you on? Saying it because the reason I ask is you're one of, we were teasing Annie when she was on, that she's got more chairs now, than the dining room table. So you're on another board. So what's your aim within that, especially relating to the event sector that we're obviously predominantly interested in?
Yeah, I've come off some of them, but it's quite pleasing that people think that I'm still on some of them. So I did a real good stint with the real living wage, about raising wage and payments and obviously incentives for them. So I sat in the leadership group of their recognised service providers. I then went into the National Association for Healthcare Security. So my mum was a nurse, my dad was a police officer, so got an affinity to the NHS in terms of it. And then there was a number in between there, obviously, but the UK Crowd Management Association, the live events world, and I don't mean to be critical of it, and I certainly won't be critical of it, but it's quite one of the most immature models at times, and scares the hell out of me. I remember one of our big customers who has events where they have 60,000 people there on a day said to me, "What keeps you awake at night?" And I said, "It'll be you ringing me saying we've had a disaster. That's what keeps you awake at night, that you wake up or you switch the telly on, somebody's ringing you saying you need to turn the news on." You've seen all those videos and those movies where somebody says, switch the telly on now. That would be an absolute, in terms of reality moment. So I think some of the challenges that we've seen, and I support the UK Crowd Management Association in a number of areas, but mainly the regulatory bodies area. So I'm the interface between the Security Industry Authority, the Sports Ground Safety Authority, and trying to obviously in terms of work with bodies that I naturally my day job would do. So again, I did say this, I've said it to Annie, I've said it to other associations and in terms of boards, where you're trying to obviously make sure that you've got a day job to do here, but also what can you give that's beneficial? And I said to Annie, I wouldn't ever want to be on a board where I'm just a token voice at a board meeting that is on a board because he wants to be on a board. The day I can't add value, or the day I stop adding value, is I think that's when you come off your boards and you actually recognise that you can't actually change anything if you're just going to obviously treat it as a bit of a one day a month meeting, really, or one day a month in terms of talking shop opportunity. And I think we've got a great opportunity in the UK in terms of the events and the crowd management arena to really try and move the needle. It's tough, absolutely. Is it tough? And there's a real need to try and obviously in terms of professionalise some areas, but that's with Protect Duty coming in and some of the actual background to the, obviously in terms of Fegan's mission, in terms of what she's been on. I think that was my desire, is I wanted to retire in 15 or so years' time, knowing that we've left a legacy and that we've moved things forward. I will tell you one story, and again, these are all stories that you'll take from the industry on your own. You won't never share the names, but there were two.
Everything's recorded. We're going to be.
Yeah, no,
this is all getting sent out there. It's just I just want to make sure.
There were two leaders of security companies in recent times who said, "I don't give a damn what this industry looks like when I retire." And at that point, that was the reality moment when you went, "Wow, that's quite damning." You've got that sort of perception of real leaders in big companies that have got that view. So I guess asking your question or answering your question, it's to leave a legacy. It's to try and leave something that's in the industry. That doesn't mean that Paul did it, because I don't think one person can do it. I think the industry's got to do it, and the industry's got to pull together and change it. And that's why the UK Crowd Management Association, for me, has got a good, and in fairness to your point, it has got a lot of people on different chairs, but she's pulled together a really good team of cross-sectional people who actually, as a cohort, my opinion, I think that they want to try and move this industry in terms of forward.
I just wanted to sort of pick up on just one thing there, because I'm going to I have to let Gary talk, unfortunately, as I say, is you mentioned the fact that what keeps you up at night is that something goes wrong at one of these events. I was talking to Paul Eales, who, as you know, he is the chair of the Skills Education Group, specifically, and looks after the British Institute of Innkeeping awarding body. And he said exactly the same thing. He said after the Phylon 4 expose, he said he'd watched that about 4 or 5 times. And he said it just filled him with dread about that something could happen in that space, and that it may reflect badly, or may wind up reflecting or giving a bad perception of BIIAB and what they did and what they stand for. And to that end, I know he's made some really significant investment in starting into try and invest that. Gary, did what? Are you speaking?
I am speaking, yeah.
Oh, well, get on with it then.
No, because you were speaking to Paul about that way, because what I was to take Paul back is about the real living wage and UK living wage. And I know you were trying to champion this, and you say you've left that board now. What do you think is a decent wage for a security officer now? I mean, I know they're trying to say the London living wage is 13.15, But it's a bit of an open-ended question as well on this, is the training. As I said, what do you think a security officer should get now?
Well, I think there's a real mix. And I look at the range of payments that I genuinely said we've got people paid as high as £17, £18 an hour. We've got people, obviously, well, when we say we don't bid for any work below the real living wage. So we've got a mixture in between there. My personal view is probably look more of it as a salary in terms of what can be compared. I would suggest that, and it is not saying that you should compensate this with hours, but I think ultimately anywhere sort of ranging between 35k and 40k for the work that people put in is probably where I think, but that probably is creeping up all the time with 10% inflation awards over the last few years. We're fortunate that some of my officers who have had opportunities to join the police, but you look at there's crossover benefits by joining the police, that obviously you get pension will kick in a bit later in your life, you'll get different benefits. But the starting salary to go into that, it's far more attractive to remain in the security industry to initially start. And again, the challenges in both of being scrutinised, being videoed, being obviously in terms of TikTok generation, actually holding you account. But I would say for me, if I could offer somebody a sort of a salary somewhere about 37, 38, depending upon how many hours they work, that gives me a starting position. And we've seen staff turnover over the years of championing that real living wage, but also finding those right customers. Carlisle or any company can't just do this on their own. Ultimately, the customers dictate a lot of that. If a customer wants to go for a cheaper charge rate and is happy to go elsewhere, you're never going to get the pay rate pushed up. But I think that for me would be a salary range that I would expect that, depending upon the number of hours they do, that would give them a decent level to actually compare to other careers and other ambitions. I know I don't know what that, I haven't got a calculator in front of me, but it depends if you were to divide that by 45 hours a week, for instance, what you get down to. I'm probably guessing would be anywhere sort of near between £14, £15 an hour in terms of an entry level.
Yeah, I agree with that. Should be about right. I mean, it's one of those things which is, as you say, a lot of it is dictated by the client, which is a sad thing because, as you just said, with your previous thing, they're prepared to pay, the basic living wage, which is not good enough. As we know, if you're working in London, London's expensive as it is, and anywhere as expensive as it is now. But on the additional training, I mean, a lot of officers now, I mean, you think about it, if I go back to when I first started, there was no training at all. We were bouncers. Our training was going to the gym, making sure we could handle ourselves when we're dealing with people. And then obviously the licensing, the local council licenses came in, 2-day course, and things started to change. And now with everything starting to change, is the point of the SIA, better training. It still needs to be improved. But a lot of the jobs out there, it seems to be security is still seen as a low-level job. And they don't feel that it's necessary for the wages to go up. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I went to the other week, which is around bringing veterans into different industries. It wasn't just our industry, and we were there talking basically around a table. Before we started, this person again was working in a different industry, more engineering, more technical. And he used the phrase of, he actually called security and sort of obviously associated roles as sort of menial. And actually I stopped him, I said, that sort of actually in terms of just completely degrades anybody who's keeping you safe when you go to all these venues, when you're able to obviously enjoy yourself. For me, we've got a big challenge around raising perceptions of security. And that means that we've also got to make sure that it is a double-edged sword, this, isn't it? Because you're not going to magically turn the industry overnight by saying we pay everybody £15 an hour and whoop-da-da, everybody's going to be brilliant. So we've got a journey around, and it's quite interesting. One of the long things that I've actually thought about, and I'm trying to find a customer who would actually take this journey with me. Because if you go and see, I'll pick a let's say a live sporting event that's got regular fixtures going throughout the season. And if you see them at the start of the tender, they'll tell you they want everybody to be 5-star. I want everybody to be 5-star. And you go, right, okay. So you draw them the bell curve of the natural 5 stars, middle of it's 3, and then you've obviously got 2s and 1s there. And you said that's the natural position. So if you want everybody to be 5-star, do we pay everybody £16.70? Oh, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. I want it on this. But what is interesting, and this is why I sort of think this is a real interesting opportunity. And I don't know, this is probably more utopia. I'm going to go with Gary. This is where my utopia would be. So if we're all 3 security officers on an event, you're good, Gary, Ian's okay, and I'm bad. Typically, the way the contract pricing works is we all get the same rate. And you sit there going, well, what's the motivation for Gary to carry on being a 5-star? And why should I change from being a 1-star knowing that I'm all going to come out with the same rate? And something like dynamic pricing, I've tried to play this around. I've got a model, by the way, I've settled this. Something that, I don't know, you got, and I'll go back to we all grew up, and there was McDonald's when they had those 5-star badges. You remember it? You got one for flipping the burgers, one for doing the fries, yeah? Imagine if there was a way of saying to people that greeted you, you were a 5-star security officer. And I'm doing some analysis of close protection licensed officers, the quality in the CP world versus the quality in the man guarding world. And then in between there, you've got DS. And we're doing this not necessarily just on security, but looking at complementary policing models. How can the private security industry support policing, which is obviously challenged for obvious reasons in terms of attracting people into policing? And actually trying to say, we don't want to lose, because the problem is, Gary, even if you are a 5-star, that one customer is also going to want a hospitality manager, or is also going to want somebody to be front of house. And the challenge then is I lose my 5-stars, and then we've got a natural opportunity that if you're unemployed, maybe the first thing they offer you is HGV license, maybe the second thing is a security license, or the either way around. So how do we make it that actually those 5-stars are rewarded? And as I said, I haven't got a magic wand. I've spoke to the SAA about maybe that every time you do a renewal, it becomes cheaper. So by the time you've done your 5th renewal, it should be a free license to a certain degree because you've been in the industry for 15 years. So trying to work out how we make it a bit of incentive to keep the good people in, really, in terms of how we bring those and keep them in. Because once we've got them in, as I said, you can't radically change the industry. But if you carry on just putting good in at the top and it keeps falling out the bottom, we're never going to move it forward.
I think, funnily enough, I have solutions to that problem.
Yeah.
I would. Actually, it did make me laugh. You just reminded me. I used to put in a guard every so often, and it became a bit of a giggle because they'd come to me every Friday night and say, "Have you got anyone?" I says, "Yeah." First of all, he was like 12 quid because it was a few years ago when I did this, but at the end it was 20, and they paid it because I needed to put somebody in. But what I did and was starting to look at doing was saying, right, we have this dynamic, here you go, range of guards, people who will appear at your site for you, but the later you leave it, the more you're going to pay.
Mm.
And I wound up with about 3 or 4 people in the end who would sit there as guard waiting, knowing that there was a chance that they may get the opportunity to earn, split the difference, as it were. Yeah, I'm nothing if not fair. I didn't keep all the profit. That they got 50%. They got an extra 50% of that £3 or £4, which per hour, as you know, is a lot of cash. As far as they're concerned, that actually worked. But going back to the problem of wages, and I am conscious of time, I have to be, is the situation of wages. You've made this decision to put to contract a certain number of hours or whatever, however that is, because I understand, I think, how it works from your guarding contract side. I'm not sure how it works entirely with the social, what I call social economy, the guest safety officer side of things. But that's a hell of a decision, Paul. And to say we are not, and more importantly, to say, and we are only employing people who we know, that we are not subbing. And I've got that right, haven't I?
Well, I think the social economy side, in fairness, the new government has brought in this 100-day pledge that they will move everybody from 0-hour contracts onto the ability to have, obviously, guarantee. I mean, how they will do that with the social economy side is still yet to be determined, because that becomes a challenge. I mean, we've got people who only ever work the Oval, for instance, during cricket. Yeah. That's all they ever do for us. And we don't see them for the rest of the 8 months, but for those 4 months, they come back and they work cricket for us. So how do I put them on some sort of guaranteed earnings beyond cricket? So I think there's a bit of work still to do on that. I think the bit to remove subcontract, without giving our company view away, is that, look, people may think that Carlisle are a national business, but I talk about the triangle. The triangle is Liverpool to Leeds to Eurotunnel. And the reason the Eurotunnel is we have the Eurotunnel. If you draw that triangle, and in there we've got some great customers in the events world that sit in that triangle. You've got to have density of customers, which is why removing the subcontracting element, of which we had a very small percentage. It was a very small percentage, so it was a little bit easier for me to do. We had a sort of a smaller gap to close. But we're fortunate to concentrate in those demographics where there is density of being able to give people more regular work. And actually, what we have seen is to cross over between traditional static security work and then picking up events. And those two have really complemented each other. We don't necessarily have barriers between events and security. There are some businesses that have an events division over here, and they'll have corporate security over here, and never does twain shall meet. For us, it all sits under the same management structures, the managing directors. So if there's a problem on a static site, they can deploy events people in there. And then similarly, we can move, because actually some of the static people who work on the same site every week would love to go and work at Ascot, Tottenham Football Club or something like that. And it gives variety of work, which then gives them that underlying ability to earn regular income. I think one of the things that you've probably opened up a discussion there is this second jobbing now, in the fact that people in the old days on static work might do 4 on 4 off for one company. And I went back, you probably remember this in contract. When I was at Rentokil Initial and at Reliance, there used to be a clause in the security officer contract that said you couldn't work for any other security company. We used to bring people in. I remember bringing people in to sort of investigate. We've seen you on a door on Friday night. Not me, son. Not me. I wasn't working that. And it's like, and we actually thought, and you look back now, what were we doing? Why was it such a big thing? Because they're probably doing it because they need to earn money. And we're sort of making it even worse. We're saying we're going to pay you like, but actually we don't want you working a second job. So I think that also is a real problem now in the industry. Is that if we don't get pay raised, and if we don't all pull together, I mean, there are countries, and again, you might have had this from other speakers, there are countries around the world that have minimum pay rates for security officers. There's other countries where the government and the police control the private security industry. I mean, you might argue that's what they are now. Is it really like that? And it's a feeding ground into policing. You know what I mean? You join security and you move up into policing. There's little bits around that, but this whole second jobbing, and that's then you do get into these dark days of looking on these Facebook groups when you see people saying there's a job going tonight in Manchester, turn blacks and whites on, and off you go, and you're all sitting there thinking, wow, that's the scary bit of this industry, knowing who's on your footprint. And one of the things that I really hope that Protect Duty does is really starts to look at, and actually some confidence that I've got with the security, I know you had Paul Forward, I think on a few weeks ago, some confidence that I've got in the SAA about linking data. That's one of the biggest powers that we've got coming forward, is the data driving some analysis of where these underhand practices might be that we can remove. Because I go back 25, I remember sitting in Loughborough, in the Reliance Loughborough office as a youngster, and on Friday night it was down to me to cover the gaps. And if that meant I was still there at 12 o'clock trying to bang the phone to cover gaps, that's what I did. So we didn't have it. You used to have bench teams. You used to have a lot of semi-retired people you call them. Now it's become one phone call to an agency, and it's like, my job here is done, and I'll worry about it tomorrow to see who turns up. And That's the real concern. But that's driving this whole wage issue and that whole professional standards issue is driving in some area a fairness to say, well, people need to, and that's the other thing about cost of living, people need to earn money. Let's be realistic about it. People
They always
to,
have, Paul.
Yeah.
That's why you do it. You don't get out, none of us get out of bed, with the love of saying, oh, I want to go. If Carlisle are poor, yeah, I'm quite willing to sell my house and home so that, Paul and the company can survive. Nobody ever does that. I did try asking when I was running my own company. Nobody ever wanted to work for nothing. Anyway, Gary, you wanted to ask about training, didn't you? Because
I did. That is funny enough. That is my next question, Ian. Thank you for bringing that up. Because I know you recently done your SIA training, Paul. 5 days or 6 days into the thing. What do you think about the training for a door supervisor?
It's a base level entry, but it's not. There's no way that having done that you can go the door straight away completely competent. So you've got to be put onto an environment where there is proper ongoing professional development.
Can you just turn your microphone up a bit, please, Paul?
Have I lost you?
That's it. Now you're back.
Yeah. You've got to be able to give some continuous professional development to those people. I think the scary bit is that, and I'm sure you've seen it, is that you can go on, which is what I did, just go on, register with a Gmail account, get my license, and before you know it, I'm working single door opportunity. And I think that's the scary bit, isn't it? That everybody perceives that just because you've got a blue badge, you know how to deal with it. I think one of the things that I would say, being a football referee, years of being abused and knowing body language probably helps you. When you're about to send off that 46-year-old on a Sunday morning, you probably see that redness coming towards you on a football pitch as much as it probably does on a Friday night when you're telling somebody not getting in oil. Unfortunately, you're going home some. Right. From that point of view. But to your point, Gary, it's baseline. And I've sort of, and even when I was at the National Association of Healthcare Security, I think the industries, and this is something that Annie is trying to drive through the UK Crowd Management Service. I think the industry associations have recognised that. The SIA is not going to bring another licence in just for events. I mean, I personally, and I've said it many times, and I've been quoted on it, after the arena, there was a real opportunity to bring an events licence in. Now, whether that's the door supervisor, we could have segregated off the door supervisor versus what is actually a DS licence for a corporate or a non-events licence. I don't think that they're going to do that. So I think in reality, there's got to be some check here. And that's, I think when you read some of the early transcripts of Protect Duty, there is an element of a hope that there might be an opportunity to use that correctly to upskill people who work in live events. My question and my concern with all that is, as soon as that comes out, once it comes out, because it's not even written yet, people can't even quote against it. My worry is that there'll be industry people completely working, and actually clients working about how can we get it round, how can we do it as cheap as we can again, how can we unpick it so the relevant person is defined as something. Well, we'll do one person out of 50 or something, whatever that looks like. The reality, I mean, we've made a commitment to train everybody in the business on act and scan. That's not just security people, but we've got a cleaning division, we've got retail division, because everybody's responsibility is to look after people. And I think that's where I really hope that in terms of that training can continue in terms of into something that's a level 2, a level 3. I mean, you've got some of them, don't forget, because you've got level 2 spectator safety, level 3, you've got crowd management qualifications.
Have you done the spectator safety training, Paul?
I haven't actually.
You should give that a go.
Right.
Sign up for one of them. That's real fun. Yeah. As someone who's delivered all of the training, all of that kind of training bits and pieces, you would just, you stand there, and if you think that the SIA training is bad, then rest assured, where there is no regulatory control on sports grounds, on spectator safety, it takes it to, when you think you found the lowest level possible, these people have managed to find the trapdoor to a level even further below.
I'll tell you though, because one of my other responsibilities for the UK Crowd Management Association is to sit on the steering group of the stewarding reform for the Premier League and the English Football Association. And that opportunity is now, they've recognised that trapdoor and they're closing it. So they're bringing in a new training qualification that is purely for, and there's a bit of negativity in this, and I will say this, and I've put this back to the working group, is that it's okay, football sorting this out, but those stewards and those security officers can work across other events and other venues. So I think whilst the Premier League and the EFL sort that out, because they've recognised that you can't just, and this whole working towards, you register somebody and you've got 12 months to work towards. I mean, that goes back to that training bit, Gary, you just said about actually, are you really able to function after a 4-hour induction or something about what might happen at a sporting arena if there's a disaster, etc. Front loading some of that training. So just to brief everybody on this podcast, it is good news that the Premier League and the EFL are going to sort football out in that regard for stewards and for security officers. I guess what I hope is that ripple then flows down. And part of my remit with the UKCMA is to sit on that steering group to try and help them, to try and understand the journey from a supplier's point of view, from an industry's point of view, about how we make sure that we do improve standards. Because I think you're right, Ian. I mean, it's probably everybody who's in this industry will probably agree with you, is that the standards at that level are really worrying. And the lack of a register, the lack of a visible badge. So do members of the public know whether you're trained or not trained? But in fact, to give you that comfort, and then it's not far off, because the original intention is that the Sports Ground Safety Authority wants to issue their first pilots for this in this coming season. So, and then following that, to make it more in terms of a national rollout in the next season, basically the 26, what will it be, 25, 26 season. So it is coming. I'm fortunate, again, maybe there's a bit of comms that needs to come out from the Sports Ground Safety Authority. I'll take that back. At which point do they start communicating? I think probably because they want to get the pilots off the ground first and then allow it. I think the other bit, to go back to Gary's point, and I've said this before, but you go and do your driving test at the DVLA test centre. You don't do it at Tom, Dick and Harry's driving sessions around the corner. And I think that's probably even the SIA or the SGSA or whoever that regulatory body is, when it was set up many moons back, to give that responsibility to Ofqual is probably half of the challenge, which is why we've ended up with a malpractice, which, as I said, I'm sure Paul Fullwood will have gone through it with you, is that Operation Benchmark, which is what is in the public domain now, is to start cracking down on that malpractice. That's just in the SIA world, though. I think you can probably tell me more stories of malpractice in training in different areas, and that's the problem, is that it's not all regulated. There's some areas that will be regulated, but there's other areas that aren't.
No, it's not. And it's so interesting what you said there. Thank you for that. Didn't me and you talk about having a driving license style event? One of our previous guests, Nick Shackleton-Jones, was very complimentary about that idea. He's an educational guru and incredibly handsome bloke. We don't like him. We're never having him back. That is so important, to get that situation on the training. The other side, as I've said before on the show, is one of the biggest shocks that I got. I was talking at a National Pub Watch conference. I was talking to one of the licensing solicitor, and it was just after the UK after the release of the Baroness Cases report. And I said, oh, yes. And of course, the stewards aren't licensed. What do you mean? He says they are. They're all licensed by the SIA. This is somebody who stands there, represents as his job, clients, and he thinks that everybody who goes and works at a football stadium is licensed by the SIA. Now that
scaringly, I mean, some major sporting events about what the approved contractor scheme is. And I think that's somewhere that the new review of the approved contractor scheme hopefully has got an opportunity, because whilst every security company should know about it because they're obviously regulated in that way, we've really got some work to do about educating customers. Really got some work to do about what are the and actually overhauling what the parameters are of that business approval scheme to make it credible. But I again keeping the confidentiality in this way, there is one major sporting venue that effectively, in terms of didn't know what it was and actually decided it didn't copy the approved contract scheme. And that's
I wonder who that is, as if I didn't already know. But Paul and I am, you know, we've got to have you back, you know, but because you're going to have to go, unfortunately, you know, because it is nearly 5 o'clock. My wife's getting home. I don't know. Yeah, I don't do anything, so I've got to go and empty the washing machine. So, you know, I just wanted you to know where you were on the scope of importance of things. It's just, so I have to let Gary, you know, basically say a final word and do the socials, you know, so then it'll be you, Paul. So if you can compose some decent thoughts, that'll be great. Go on, Gary.
Thanks, Ian. Well, one thing we'd definitely like to have you back, Paul, because the football side and the stadium side is something I really want to go into a lot deeper, because they are a law unto themselves on that point, and I think it's something which a lot of people don't understand that, which you've highlighted today. So I've got mega questions on that, but as I say, we run out of time. On that point, just for everybody else there, if you like our content and you'd like to know more, please like and subscribe, press the button somewhere down there, wherever it is. Yeah, or you can email me or direct message myself through LinkedIn or on here. Ian doesn't accept messages, or you can go to our website, which Ian will put in the link below. Over to you.
Paul.
Are you going, Ian? Go
on. No, final words from you. I did the sign off because it is my show. You know.
Well, I would say, look, guys, it's been amazing to catch up with you. Keep doing what you're doing. Ian, I love seeing you at all the events. Always the person who's never afraid to ask the difficult questions. And I think that the work that you're doing as a two in terms of this podcast, we've got to ask the difficult questions, because if we don't ask the difficult questions, we'll never change. So keep doing what you're doing. And thank you for having me. And as I said, maybe in a year's time, I'd love to come back, if not before, and tell you a bit more about, obviously, the football side.
What's the matter with you? You know, it took ages to get you thinking. I'd have to book you now. Anyway, people, what can I say? It's been a terrific show. Thank you very much. Gary, yes. And he got it right, by the way. It's a bits and pieces. Also, I forgot to say, we've actually got Paul Besson on next week from Retail Tech, an actual world influencer in the subject of retail theft and shop protection. So really looking forward to talking to him. But you were okay, Paul. You were okay. The other thing is, on a serious note, there is so much that we need to do to improve wages, to improve training, and to keep pushing the role, you know, of competence over compliance. And the bit, as I say, I go back to the thing that struck me most of all is what Paul said. What keeps you awake at night? What is it that makes you worry about yourself, your staff, and your company? And on that, peace out.
See you later.